Here we are looking at a portrait of Antoine Watteau by Rosalba Carrera, Carriera. This portrait is pastel on paper, completed in 1721, perhaps months before the artist's death in his mid-30s. Paris gradually regained its prominence in the arts and politics of the time in France that it had enjoyed in the previous century before the ascendancy of Louis XIV in his reign, and also his prominence at Versailles. During the declining years of Louis XIV, the Sun King, due to his decreased activities, the piety of his companion, Madame de Maintenon, Maintenon, Paris gradually became more attractive. The 17th century tradition of the literary salon was revived in Paris by women like the Duchess de Maine, Maine, and Madame de Lambert, Lambert. Literary and artistic talents found encouragement in such salons where social and artistic success could be combined. Upon the death of Louis XIV in 1715, Philippe, Duke of Orleans, Orleans, nephew of the Sun King, Louis XIV, assumed the reign of government as regent during the minority of Louis XV. The power of the 8-year regency resided in the various councils of state that were established by the new government. During this period of the late 1710s and 1720s, there was a rise of wealth among a small class of financiers and other nouveaux riches who became more powerful patrons of the arts. Samuel Bernard, Bernard, and Pierre Crozat, Crozat, were among the most obvious examples of the new, moneyed class that grew more influential than the old aristocracy. The regent himself set the tone for this period of economic speculation and social adventure, with the grand receptions that he held in Paris at the Palais Royal. Others followed suit in their various mansions and townhouses in Paris. Watteau approached the new society as an outsider since he came from Valenciennes, Valensciennes, which had until recently been part of the Spanish Netherlands. Watteau had not been subjected to the French and Italian traditions, rather preferring the Flemish, Dutch, and North Italian art of Flanders. In Paris, Watteau was subsidized by wealthy collectors like Pierre Crozat, Crozat, and the learned connoisseur Jean de Julien, who would become a principal patron. Julien is spelled Julienne. After his arrival in Paris in 1702 or perhaps 03, Watteau made his living as a copyist and came into contact with engravers, collectors, and dealers. He entered the studio of Claude Gillot, Gillot, between 1703 and 1706, working with Gillot for 3 to 5 years. Gillot constructed scenes from plays performed by the Italian comedy troupe at the fairs and theaters of early 18th century Paris, representing specific moments drawn from a theater piece. Watteau in 1708 moved to the studio of Claude Audran, Audran, where he worked with Audran and provided the figurative parts to the decorative ensembles that Audran produced to finish the residences of high nobility, especially the group around the Dauphin, the prince. This ornamentation refined the classical tradition of grotesques from ancient Roman palaces, villas that were excavated since the 16th century. These painted decorations could cover walls or ceilings and were repeated with a repertory of motifs that included tendrils and garlands and swags, masks, isolated human figures, birds, mammals, and fantastic creatures. Audran introduced Watteau to the Luxembourg Palace, where he was its curator, in order to study the Maria de' Medici cycle of Rubens' paintings. Watteau first came into contact with Flemish artists in Paris, perhaps the Flemish artists and picture sellers who sold their works at the fairs outside of Paris. So he was a little bit familiar with the style of Rubens. Watteau in 1715 painted the Seasons for the dining room of the wealthy collector Crozat, with whom Watteau stayed and where he met famous painters like Charles de la Fosse, Antoine Coypel, and of course the Italian pastel painter Rosalba Carrera. All of this perhaps as early as 1716. The writer Thomas Crow, C-R-O-W, points out that a shadow academy or a second academy was organized around Crozat's gatherings in his own house. Watteau, Nicolas Flegel, and connoisseurs like Caylus and Mariette Julien met frequently. This was a place of discussion and an international clearinghouse where artists from Venice, such as Pellegrini, Carrera, and Canaletto, stopped by and conversed on various subjects. Artists of Crozat's influence and not the Academy provided the young monarch Louis XV with decorative commissions.